it's so hard to get into whatever the latest show is. A million people tell you you gotta watch the Monkeys of Alcatraz. It's amazing. Like, people will tell you to watch crazy shows you don't care about. You'll see a trailer for a show and be like, do I really want to invest a minimum of 10 hours just to figure out whether or not something's good? You can watch a movie for 2 hours and then boom, you got a great experience in 2 hours. But no, shows are tough. They're much harder to sink your teeth into. But now and again, we get an experience like Shogun. Shogun, a miniseries that was on FX/Hulu. And I saw a trailer for it and I was like, I am out. It looks like it's a bunch of CGI nonsense. It looks like it's modernized. Like, I'm not interested in this at all. However, I am a bitch for critical reviews that overwhelm the internet. And that was the case with this show, where everyone was saying, this is the show. This is the show. It's Game of Thrones in Japan. You have to watch the show. So I was in. I tried watching it and I was hooked. Jason, you are our beacon of Eastern enlightenment. You love Japanese culture, Japanese art. Shogun, which according to the International Movie Database says it is based on a novel. It says when a mysterious European ship is found marooned in a nearby fishing village, Lord Yoshi Toranaga discovers secrets that could tip the scales of power and devastate his enemies. This was a novel written by James Clavell some 50 odd years ago. He has a fascinating backstory. But Jason, talk to me about Shogun, this show that has taken over the planet. What were your thoughts?
Very positive. I know, shocking. I had a very positive reception of this thing. But honestly, I watched it day one, hour one. Like, it dropped. I started it, and I stopped watching it like halfway through the first episode because I wasn't in the right mindset or something like that point. But I didn't feel the draw. I thought I was going to get off of it, so stopped. Then the internet yelled at me that I need to give this another shot, and I finished watching the first and was completely hooked. But I thought that was very strange for me because I thought I would have really just jumped on this immediately. And if you remember, the first kind of scenes is John in the boat, with all the English dudes, just bitching about being lost, sort of thing. I was like, this is not what I thought I was signing up for. So of course, when they hit Japan, it's why everyone is loving this show, because it's such a great rendition of that time period. It's we don't get that much of the Edo era of Japan, and if it's done, it's usually done in some very kind of old samurai movie kind of feel. I couldn't even believe how perfect this show was. And this is me going into it with no book knowledge, no knowledge of the 80s movie. Or was it a miniseries? Did we figure that out, if the 80s one was a miniseries or movie?
I believe it was a miniseries. I have not confirmed that, though.
80s seems weird to have a miniseries, though. I don't think that was something that, continued.
It was a thing. It's I will get confirmation on that.
Okay, we'll cross the top or something like that. But perfect, absolutely perfect show. Loved this. So I cannot wait to just talk about how awesome this thing was and how many life lessons I think I learned from the show coming out afterwards, and just how many of the actors are just freaking incredible. I was so impressed. I knew I was going to like it, but I didn't think I'd like it this much.
Rambo, you did not want to watch this. I tried to convince you because both you and I were like, no, it's tough to commit to something. After I watched the first episode, I'm like, no, this is good. You got to watch it. You begrudgingly watched it.
I hate committing to shows. I truly hate it. I do not like watching shows unless they're top tier because it's such a commitment. It's 10 hours. This show's over 10 hours, or just about 10 hours of content. It's such a commitment. And it's like, if it just leads to a whatever sort of ending, then you just have to go back. I mean, I could have played Baldur's Gate 3 for that many hours. So, yeah, I was not hyped on this. I saw trailers before it came out. Thought, seems intriguing. Show about, Japan from hundreds of years ago. Sounds really cool. But I was like, FX, maybe they're hit and miss with shows. Sometimes they put out good ones. And then, yeah, you raved about it. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll give it a shot. And then that first episode just fucked me up. That first episode is crazy. They boil a man alive. They murder a baby. What else happens? They chop a guy's head off. Those are the highlights. But it was just like, I was like, holy shit, this show's like wild. Not for the faint of heart, but I will appreciate a show that does not pull punches and is just is true to itself. So very pleasantly surprised. I'm bummed that this is a mini series and not a show, and it's only one season, unless they do the sequel book or whatever. But currently, it looks like it's just the one season, which really sucks because it was so good, and I would love to spend more time in this world and in this with these showrunners. So awesome content, a lot of good characters in this show. Really impressed by how many characters have meaningful arcs and really memorable performances. So that's hard to pull off, and especially in a one season show. It's not like, oh, they get good in season 2, season 3, like literally in the context of content or within the confines of one season, they managed to pull this off, and I'm really impressed.
So the author wrote 6 books, and he calls it the Asian series. And so there's 5 other books that are different times, different places in Japan, but kind of all the similar things. So we won't get more of these characters if they do anything, but they have talked about doing more of these because Tokunaga, he was the producer of the show as well as the star. So he was
the actor Hiroyuki Sanada.
Yes, Sanada. Yep, he produced the show, so he was a big part of this whole thing. And he's like, yeah, I want to do more if you give me the chance. And the fact of how well this did, I bet you will see the other books getting made into miniseries as well.
There's the core element of this show which sold me is how they handle language. It's the way they pull it off in this is so rare. There's great shows and movies that just whatever language the characters are supposed to be saying, they just cut to English and it's just like, just go with it. There's Chernobyl, an amazing miniseries about the Russian atomic apocalypse catastrophe that was the Chernobyl plant melting down, but they're all speaking British English. And it's a great show, and it's like you just kind of just ignore it. There's Rome, a show about the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, and they're all speaking British English. And again, you just go with it. But there gets a point where something like this, all of the Japanese characters, they speak Japanese. They do not speak English, except for one character pretty much. And there's an English character, John Blackthorne. He is the guy from England that is kind of the vessel to learn about Japanese culture through, if you are an American or otherwise. Mariko translates for John Blackthorne to the Japanese and back and forth, and sometimes she translates accurately and sometimes she does not. And that's one of the really cool parts of this show, these characters developing and learning about each other through sometimes an inaccurate representation of what they're saying. And it is a very rare thing in any movie or TV show that I've seen before. And that is one of the things that really builds on the world and the lore, is that these are people from different parts of the world that are trying to accomplish different goals, but they're doing it in a Tower of Babel sort of way.
The value of life, like the value of life in Japan, and they constantly talk about that in almost every episode. Is how quickly life is over. Because I mean, the earthquake factor in Japan was very real. Like how much they experience earthquakes like that was their society, and the fact that you could be living life one day and an earthquake takes you away the next is like so common. And so how you live your life and what you actually like want to sacrifice your life for, like I'd rather do something to sacrifice my life for some meaning than to be taken by some earthquake or trip and fall on a stick or eat a bad apple. It was all about how you went out. So I think that was almost the other biggest element of this show, was how people like valued their lives, how they treated death, and how they almost used death, because that's the whole thing. That's how all Moriko's death is what made all of the ending happen. She was the Crimson Sky, she was the sacrificial lamb, and that changed absolutely everything at the end. And Tokunaga knew that. He was like, Crimson Sky was getting a woman to do a job that a man couldn't do. Like he says that so many times, and her death at the end of it was that, the final, like the stamp on it kind of thing. So we could actually spend hours talking about how the value of life in the show is used. It's very cool.
When I was going through my movie run of movies that are on the IMDb, like top 250 that I hadn't seen when I was like 17, 18 years old, and I was going through all those movies, a Japanese movie from back in the day is called Harakiri. And that movie did not sit well with me because when I watched it, the beginning of the movie is one, if I recall correctly, I only saw the movie once, it was a long time ago, so I apologize if I get any of this wrong. But one samurai is, he has to commit what is referred to, because the movie's title is Harakiri, which is when you stab yourself in the guts and you open your guts. In the movie, this character's like, all right, I'm going to commit Harakiri, but first, I'm going to tell you my life story. And all these guys that are like surrounding him being like, you have to kill yourself. And then they sit down like, all right, we'll listen to your life story before you kill yourself. And it seems like he's trying to talk them out of the fact that he's going to do this. And he talks about his life story. And then at the end of the movie is like, all right, I'm going to do it. And it's like, I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Who would believe such nonsense that this guy would actually stab himself in the gut and these guys would like respect his wishes to tell his life story? This is nonsense. Well, after watching this show, I'm like, oh my God, there is a stark contrast to how people deal with suicide and death in Japanese samurai culture than what I thought when I was like 17 years old, because it is impressive the level of societal cultural difference when they talk about things like, oh, it's disrespectful to step on the sand, it's disrespectful to do this. You really feel it feels like a movie, like a Star Wars movie of a different planet, of like, this is respectful and this isn't, because these characters adhere strictly to this code that is based on reality, and it really does jar you as a viewer because it's unlike anything that a Western viewer can really understand.
I do love the aspect of how many times, and it lessens as the show goes on because they understand each other better. But John Blackthorne's character and versus all the Japanese characters, and how they just think of each other as savages, and they constantly keep calling each other savages because for their different cultural like norms. In his eyes, like, you guys don't, like, life means nothing to you. You'll die over anything. Like, you step in the wrong spot, you take down someone's rabbit because he said not to, or like not a rabbit but a pheasant. There's like the pheasant, right, that's hanging up, and they take it down, and they're just like, yeah, we had to kill the old gardener guy because you said not to take it down. He took it down. It translates so well, and it's so moving how like you get such a good look of what life was like at that time. I can't think of another show that's done it better as far as showing a non-modern culture. Like, it's a little bit easier to do if you were doing like modern day Japan, where a bunch of people are currently living and they can just tell you what their life is like right now. That's a lot easier to do than being like, let's showcase what life was like in depth 400 years ago or 500 years ago. That's a lot harder to do, and this show nails it.
Yeah, he brought on experts in every single category. He said like Japanese experts in hairstyle and wigs, Japanese experts in costumes and design, and then the building of a lot of those villages and things like that. He spared no expense. He said, I watched this great interview with him, because there's actually a lot of really good interviews with him about how the concept of the show, and how he did not spare any kind of like time, effort, or money on authenticity, and it just shows 100%. And then like the music and just the darkness, the feel. And he said everyone was complaining about how dark and rainy everything was, and he was like, that's how it was in Japan. It was dark and rainy. I'm not going to make it all like bright and beautiful and cherry blossoms everywhere. It's like, it rained a lot and it was really muddy a lot of the time too. So it's not like make this into some false reality of it. And you did say the fictional story. This is based off true story of this guy named William Adams. He was a Dutch explorer that did all this, and it's exact. I mean, I wouldn't say exactly, but it's very
historical fiction. It's based on, but it's not directly accurate. But yes,
yeah, major characters in real life, kind of. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much they could have like change this because it felt so real. It felt so historical and accurate, So I would like to see, because you listen to the book people and they're like, oh, that's not the same as the books. It's the same sort of Game of Thrones shit where it's like when you watch something, you couldn't enjoy it because it wasn't like the books. But how accurate was the books? How accurate was the show? How was accurate the 80s thing? So yeah, well, we can take all three and take the best parts of it, I guess.